Welcome to another edition of the podcast known as Blending the Family. Blending the family. Blending the family. Woohoo! How are you? It's me, Tommy Maloney. I am your host. And right behind me, if you can see, that's scary. That means you've hacked into my laptop. My buddy, Otis, is right behind me. Looking at me like, dude, what is up with you? I hope you are in a great mood. I'm in a great mood. It has been a weird, strange week, but in a good way. And so I am so honored you're here. I am grateful you've downloaded this podcast episode. Before I forget, please, my new book comes out in September. My new book, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. Coming out in September. Go to my dad's. Are you writing this down? Write this down. If you're driving, you might not want to do that. Anyway, mydadsadvicebook.com. mydadsadvicebook.com is the website where you can get the pre-sale order. So excited, so pumped. Whew, September can't come fast enough. Yeah, I've had some caffeine today. Now, let me explain something. A little peek behind the curtain. All right, so Monday, I'm recording this Friday, and I should have had this already done and uploaded, but it's been, like I said, a weird week. So Monday, I was working on my guest, this one, Eddy. You can find him on his website at artoffatherhood.net. artoffatherhood.net. Find him on LinkedIn, Eddy. That's how I discovered him. A positive fatherhood role model, cool guy. He and I, I don't know if you know who Jesse Itzler is. But Jesse Itzler is a, multi-millionaire, I think. But where are his books? His first book, Living with a Seal, and then his second book, Living with the Monks. Great books. Anyway, I saw on Instagram the other day, he was talking about how he doesn't like hanging out with like-minded people because you're thinking the same. That's, in my opinion, that's not true. But hanging out with Art, it was awesome because we both had radio backgrounds. We're both, pro-fatherhood, and just I think we had a really good conversation. But I'm going to put that on a pause and say, so Monday I was putting this podcast together. I was going through the edits. I started thinking, I'm gonna work on this for a couple hours, and I'm gonna take a break. And I can't remember what happened on Monday. Something happened. I don't know. Nothing dramatic. Nothing. But I don't know. Maybe I took a nap, a lap. Maybe I took a lap and then I took a nap. All right. Then Tuesday I had a physical. Okay, and is the Olivia Newton song "Let's Get Physical" popping in your head right now? You're welcome. Okay. You're welcome for that earworm. Is that what it's called? Anyway, at my physical, man, I am having problems talking. And you'll hear it. You'll hear it on this episode with Art. Before I forget, shout out to John Francis, the founder of Father's Eve, and James Lopez, the founder of Fatherhood is Lit. We talk about them, and I couldn't remember their names to save my life. But anyway, so I'm at my physical, and my doctor, awesome guy. I haven't had an awesome doctor in a long time. Anyway, he says, by the way, you're at a certain age, and you probably have had chickenpox, which was true when I was a kid. He said, I have the shot, the vaccine for shingles. do you want to do that? And my face lit up. I'm like, yeah, I want to do it. He goes, all right, it's you get one shot now, and then second shot in a couple of months or 3 months, what have you. I'm like, all right, cool. I was all excited because I've been wanting to get the shingles shot, say that 10 times fast. And so when he presented it, I'm like, heck yeah. So the physician's assistant, my doctor's physician's assistant comes in, and she says, which arm? I said, the right arm. And I said, oh, by the way, I forgot to ask, are there any side effects? Like with the COVID, I got the Johnson & Johnson shot, and it at least a day and a half kicked my butt. A day and a half down. Down goes Tommy. Down goes Tommy. So I was, for that. And she said, no, you'll just have a sore arm and you should be good. I'm like, all right. Well, Tuesday, I'm starting to feel not well. Tuesday evening, I would say. And we had a guest at our house. We had my wife's nephew's son, little Liam, who's almost two, something like that. Anywho, we were babysitting because Liam's mom, her parents have season tickets to the Colorado Rockies, and during this week, the All-Star game was happening, and they went to the All-Star game. Hence, we were babysitting Liam. His real name is William, named after my father-in-law. And of course, I call him Will I Am. Who doesn't love Will I Am? Hello, love Will I Am. And I'm going to be that weird, I'm going to call myself uncle. I'm going to say it. My wife was calling me uncle, so I got permission. So I'm going to be that goofball uncle calling him Will I Am, and he's going to hate me, but, let's have some fun. But during the evening, I'm just feeling drained. Come Wednesday, I'm down for the count again. I have like zero energy, and I had plans to record an podcast episode, which I still did, but I did something I normally don't do. Right now, I have a standing desk, and if you've ever seen the pictures on Instagram, I love my office. I have a kick butt office. But I had to do the conversation sitting down. I don't like sitting down. I like the energy up. I like being up. I'm standing up right now, and I'm bouncing around, so I like the energy. So I don't do anything Wednesday. I record the episode. Well, I tried to record it with this young lady named Cassie Boyd, and my internet crashed. The internet stopped working here at the house, and so we got most of it recorded, but we had to do a part 2, so to speak. And after, I said to her, I go, yeah, the internet's not coming back. I don't know. I took a nap, and I napped, and then went to bed about, early, like 6, after my wife came home, and I went to bed. And anyway, Thursday I wasn't going to be home. Are you taking notes? I hope you're taking notes on Thursday. I spent part of my day with my son Connor. I had to go to the hockey store. Thank you to my dad, who helped contribute immensely to a new piece of hockey equipment that the boy needed. And then after that, Connor and I went to lunch. And then from there, I had to go pick up my wife Ann from work because we only have one car for the family. And by the time I got home, after driving in Colorado or Denver traffic, I was just drained. And so I didn't do anything. And now here we are. It's Friday, and I'm hours late. And I've already recorded, so finished up recording Cassie's episode. And then I've got Derek Reynolds I recorded. Check him out. Hug-a-Dad, H-U-G, hug, A, the letter A, dad.com, Hug-a-Dad. Recorded an episode with him. And then here's the best part. Well, it's been a great day. The next thing I did today was I haven't done this in almost a couple years. I gave a live in-person presentation, a talk, a speech, a program, as they say in the Kiwanis world, because my wife said to me, "Oh, by the way, our guest speaker, a good friend of ours, had to back out at the last moment, had meetings, and she said, 'Can you fill in?' I said, 'Sure,' and filled in. Came home, changed clothes, because I wear a shirt and tie when I do my presentations. I'm now in my t-shirt and shorts and recording this. And I know I've gone on way too long, but I'm just so excited that I've been able to have it's been a blessed day. It's been a great day. And part of it is, I want to leave, before I talk a little bit more about Art Eddy, I wanted you to think about something. So the new website, blendingthefamily.com, is up, blendingthefamily.com. And I want you to look at the coaching section. And yes, I'm going to plug it. I'm going to plug my coaching, because wouldn't it be great to have somebody that, when you get up in the morning, is already rooting for you. Somebody that's going to be on your side to help you start your day off. That's me. Okay. I want to be your cheerleader. I want to be in your corner. Whatever other cliches, I want to be there for you. So please check out the website, blendingfamily.com. Sign up for a free 30-minute conversation, you and I, one-on-one. We'll see if coaching is right for you, if I'm right for you. If I'm not, I might know somebody that can. So there you go. So please check out the book at the website, mydadsadvicebook.com. Check out the coaching, the speaking, the podcast stuff at blendingthefamily.com. Art Eddy, I am so excited. I've been enjoying all this stuff on LinkedIn, but we talk about a few things I didn't realize, but he is one of the co-founders of Life of Dad. Check out Life of Dad on the Instagram and on the Facebook. Great stuff. I love Life of Dad. Art also has a book called The Life of Dad Book. Great stories in there. I mean, some A-listers that he had conversations with. We talk about that. We also talk about a good friend of mine who's been on the podcast, Nate, sent me a text, and it was a proud dad moment, but it was also a moment where I felt good about myself as far as raising just a great young man, and nervous that and Art and I talk about this, as dads, are we doing enough for our kids? I mean, not to say that we want to be, what is it, and I know Art mentioned this in this episode, helicopter parents. I don't want to hover over my son or my daughters, my bonus daughters. I want to be there side by side. I want to be there to support them. I want to help them. I want to be there when they fail, to help them. Okay. And one of the things that Art and I were talking about is, and his kids are still a little young for this, but are we doing enough for our kids to help them become productive citizens? Okay. I also mentioned to Art, I read this article in the Huffington Post, and it's, "My best friend and I are straight married men, and we tell each other I love you." I love this article because I have a very small group of guy friends that are comfortable. We're all comfortable saying I love you, and I'm blessed. Okay. I am really, really blessed that I can say to another dear friend of mine, be it any of my friends named Chris, Freddie, Keith, Ken, who am I missing? Scott's, the Scots. I can say I love you to these guys, and not go get a ew or what are you, weird or something. So I'm just, if you're a guy and if you've got friends like that, you better stay in their life, and vice versa. So anyway, Eddy is the guest on this podcast, and again, check out his website, artoffatherhood.net. He has a great article about the Reebok pump. Reebok pump is coming back, and I had to laugh, and you'll hear the story why. Because Reebok used to make ice skates, and my son Connor had Reebok skates, and we talk about that. So again, please support anybody that's on this podcast with listening to their podcast, because Art has a podcast. Support James Lopez, Fatherhood is Lit, John Francis, Father's Eve. Please support me. That's my ask. That is my ask, because I love doing this podcast. I really do, and as you can tell, I'm excited when I get to do it. And as you can hear, my voice is going after 2 podcast interviews today, giving a speech, doing this. So there you go. All right, let's end it. How do we end it, everybody that has listened to this podcast? And if you are a first-time listener, this is how we end it, because I am a huge fan of Terry Crews. I heard an interview with Terry Crews, and he simply made the statement, and this is how we end this podcast, or my portion of the podcast, and that is, your success is my success. Eddy, art of fatherhood.net. Enjoy. Enjoy. Enjoy.
Do I sound all right?
You sound great. You sound like a professional podcaster writer. Well, thanks for doing this, Art. I really am excited about talking to you about, because I've seen what you've done on LinkedIn, your successful podcast. I didn't realize you were one of the co-creators of Life of Dad. I'm huge fan.
Thanks.
So, where did your passion or your purpose for positive fatherhood, where did this all start?
Well, that's a great question, and again, thank you for having me on the show. It was for me. I always joke, like, I never thought about uh, having the site Art of Fatherhood or working in this parenting space. It just happened that way. I got out of radio to be the stay-at-home dad, and once I started, being able to manage things pretty well, like getting into a routine with my kids and all that, I'm like, I kind of want to do something. So I had a creative outlet, and I was doing a podcast with some of my guys, the guys I used to work with in radio, and a friend of a friend was like, "Hey, I know you guys are doing a podcast. We're looking to get it, a podcast started on the site called Life of Dad." And I started working there, and started writing articles. My first article on parenting or fatherhood was called "Kids Are Like Velociraptors," and then more and more, it just being in this space and seeing all of these, dads and moms caring about, the roles, especially, for us as dads. Like, I was experiencing a lot of things being a stay-at-home dad. Instead of it being a room parent, it was a room mom, right? And I'm like, no, well, I'm a
Right.
dad, so we can go with room parent, right? So more and more, there were certain issues that I kind of wanted to tackle and learn about and all that other good stuff. So it kind of snowballed into all of these things, wanting me to be a better parent. I think drove me to, like, you're all right, so I am a dad of 2 daughters. I am writing about this. I'm learning from other dads, and I just wanted to keep on building on that and keep on, being a better dad, but also, putting the spotlight on other dads. And so there's the podcast, called The Art of Fatherhood, and then I do a weekly column on my website over at artoffatherhood.net called Dads Doing It Right. And it's just showcasing a bunch of dads, just, showcasing their fatherhood journey in a positive way. And we're not like, I mean, Homer Simpson was a caring dad, but he's kind of he kind of backdoors into being a good dad, right? Like there are a bunch of the stuff sometimes you see on TV. Things are changed now, but before it's kind of like the dad didn't do that much and he was kind of out of the loop. And we're trying, like you, man, we're trying to change that narrative, right?
Yeah, and you bring up a great point, especially with Homer Simpson. My biggest pet peeve was Tim Allen's Tool Time, because the media really portrayed us dads in a negative light, as far as Tim Allen's character couldn't do anything unless he had to have permission, and he had to go over to his neighbor and say, well, what do I need to do? Well, you figure it out. I mean, I finally feel, and I don't, you can agree, disagree, that I think because of what you've been doing, Art, what Life of Dad, what James, I'm drawing a blank, James with on Instagram with his Fatherhood is Lit. I mean, it does seem finally that there is a new wave. Again, I just say positive fatherhood, that it's finally coming to, like you said, a spotlight where there are positive stories of fatherhood, versus something I read this past weekend about a woman was asking a group about a deadbeat dad. And I said, the first thing I say is, you need to remove labels. You cannot call, guess what? There are deadbeat moms out there. I'll say it. So I finally feel that there is a new generation of people that are, again, putting a positive spin on fatherhood. Do you feel the same way, Art?
Yeah, I totally do. And, for me, you kind of mentioned James Lopez, Fatherhood is
Yeah,
Lit.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
yeah, he's great. Like there's just so many things where, the Tim the Toolman Taylor, like Home Improvement, where it was like, yeah, he's got a, there, it almost seemed like there was so much self-doubt, right? It was almost like perpetuating the idea that dads have the self-doubt and not, trusting their gut. There's so many books on parenting when you become a dad or whatever the case may be. You can read up on it, but we all know like our instincts kick in and we find a way to be the best parent we possibly can be if we're truly all about being a dad. And you can't just go halfway on it. I mean, kids will definitely understand that, and if they see that you're not fully committed, they'll be like, well, why do I need to be there for my dad if he's not going to be there for me, right? So
Right.
I think there is that shift where things are turning, which is good for all of us to see that dad's got this too. I mean, we're just coming off the weekend of Father's Day, and I see some dad writers or you know authors, whatever the case may be, just being like, all right, great, it, now that Father's Day over, are people just going to have a narrative that moms are just the only parent, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's why we have this space where it's like we got to keep on educating people that dads are parents too. There's a lot of great resources out there. Um, and the At Home Dad Network, has that shirt that says "Dads aren't babysitters," right? We're not babysitters. So
Exactly.
the fact that you know sometimes we're viewed it that way, and sometimes I've heard dads like, "Oh, my wife's away, so I got to babysit the kids." And if that's the way they feel, or maybe that's the way they were brought up, but it's like no, like no, like it's just you and your kids tonight, right? It's not like you're parenting them. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like you're babysitting them. You're parenting them, of course. You're
Yeah.
not babysitting them. Sorry, that's what I meant.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it's a valid point too, because you hire a babysitter when you go out. You are not the babysitter, like you just said, Art. You're the parent.
Yeah, no doubt.
Um, well, you were mentioning James Lopez. I also need to throw out, we had another, and this is why I'm so excited about, talking to, dads in this positive fatherhood space. Saturday was actually from Jane, with Francis. I'm drawing a blank. I've had a couple of good cups of coffee. But celebrating Father's Eve last Saturday. And, I was like so gung ho. I was like, I looked at the Father's Eve website. There was nobody representing Colorado at that time. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. And then my son emailed me and said, or texted me, said, "Hey dad, I've got a hockey game at 7:15. I'm like, cool. This is what I want to, participate in. I want to be hanging with my son, even though I know how important Father's Eve is to get that movement going. But, for me, yesterday, my wife and I were on a hike, and we got up to this one part of the hike, and all of a sudden I hear my phone. I got a text. I'm like, we're this high up and I'm getting messages. Cool. And so this message was from a good friend of mine, Nate, and it really meant a lot to me. And he says, "Happy Father's Day to you. You have a great kid, and that is a testament to your devotion and love as a father." I really took a back to it, Art, because as a father who, after the divorce, was a part-time, unfortunately I call it a part-time dad because I only had my son 50% of the time.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I struggle with as a dad is making sure that even though when I'm not present physically, that I'm present in other ways. And one of the biggest things is now my son, who's 18, he and I are getting ready to take a trip to go visit the college he's going to this fall. Making sure that, these past 18 years that you've done I know it's not everything, but everything that you can possibly, trying to be the best dad you can. And I feel that that's where a lot of us dads struggle with is, are we doing the best we can?
Yeah. I mean, I think that you always, if you're, by the way, too, like, it's funny. I'm not a coffee drinker, but I know that people love coffee to get their day going. John Francis is the
Thank
gentleman
you.
that started over Father's Eve. No, he's great too. Like, again, so you see all of these organizations, and you have like the Dad 2.0 conference, right?
Right.
And you have like the City Dads group,
Yep.
and I've worked with a bunch of those guys over there too. So I always say, like, if you're not, I was talking to my one of my daughters about something, and we were just sharing some things about um, just like start doing something, whether it's in front of your school or presenting something. I said, if you're not nervous, that almost kind of seems like maybe you're not into it, you don't care, right? And
Exactly.
if we feel like, dad's like, are we doing enough? Are we there enough? Or how can we be better? That's a good mindset to have. I mean, you got to have some confidence, but it's also it can't be, on the borderline of being cocky. Like, yeah, I got this parenting thing. Like, I'm good. Like, what I'm doing right now, I don't need to improve on in this whole fatherhood space, or just me being a dad. But I think if you are nervous, if you are questioning, like, am I doing the right things? That's great, because you can kind of go down your mental checklist of like, all right, am I doing this? How can I improve? So I think having those questions, having those doubts, being nervous about like, am I doing the best I can as a dad, really shows that you're all in, and you care, and you want to make sure that you are there for your children. So having some nervousness, having some questions about like, am I doing enough, I think is part of being a good parent.
Yeah, the hardest thing for me was a very similar situation. I was a stay-at-home dad, and my former wife said, "Do you really want to do this?" Because she was questioning it as because I'm an only child. I never babysat, never changed a diaper in my life. And she said, if you aren't able to do this, that's okay. But are you sure about this? I said, yes, I really wanted to do it and talk about, and I'm sure you're not the only one here, Art. I mean, I'm sure there are many dads, and I'm sure a lot of moms too, talk about training on the job, yeah, I made mistakes, but I am so grateful that I had that opportunity to spend with my son. He was probably close to 2 when I went back to the so-called workforce, and he went to daycare. But the point is, I knew every single day I was going to fail, but it was the journey. It was the opportunities to, learn from those failures as, a stay-at-home dad. And, those times where you didn't bring enough, wipes, or your kid is throwing up and you're just like beside yourself because you don't know what to do. But for me, it was just that bonding, creating memories. And I would never, ever take any of that back.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's funny you mentioned the wipes thing, where it's like, did I have enough wipes? I think there was one time that my wife and I kind of looked at each other. We were at the time we were living in New Jersey, and we were going to like the science center, kind of in Jersey City, I believe. And we looked at each other, and our youngest was still in diapers, and we were like, "Did you restock the diaper bag?" I was like, "No, I thought you did." So like so we didn't have any diapers, and we're like, "All right, we're about 45 minutes away from home. Like, all right, where do we go?" And the uh, the science center wasn't. It was on the outskirts of Jersey City, so it was just kind of like this big parking lot. And I'm like, all right, so I went to like this one bodega a couple blocks down. Like my wife and my daughters went in, and they started looking around the museum. There's a bunch of like cool kid activities, but like I'm going to different bodegas trying to find diapers, and like she needed maybe a size 3, and there was like size 2 and size 5. I'm like, well, we'd rather have a bigger size and we can kind of fold it in, like fold and stuff like that. So just you hearing that takes me back to that memory where like, oh, man, we both forgot. So um yeah, I just think that like having those moments and trying to um going back to James Lopez with Father is Lit, it's like presence over presence,
Yes,
right? Like,
yes.
and what with making those moments, it's on my podcast, The Art of Fatherhood, I always ask, one of the questions I ask at the end, I do like a fatherhood quick five. I said, describe the perfect family vacation, and pretty much everyone says is like, as long as we're together. And people always say like, then they say like, I know it sounds cliche. I'm like, no, like cliches are there for a reason, right? Because there is some truth behind those sayings and all that. So no matter where you are with your kids, no matter if you're driving them to some type of practice, or you're going on an errand with them, those are the perfect times to have these conversations with them, because you're not distracted with a device, they're not distracted with a device. You're not like in front of a TV having like a kind of sort of engaged conversation. So making those moments and having those ideas, like like you said, like making memories with them, I think is huge. My kids, they're 13 and 10, and they always love saying like, tell me stories when we were kids. I'm like, well, first of all,
Mm.
you still are kids, but like I'm guessing obviously they mean that when they were younger. So we talk about stuff, and I might, my wife and I will start talking about stuff, and then they'll say like, oh yeah, and then I remember this, and be like the smallest detail or the smallest thing, but it meant the world to them. It's like, oh, we got ice cream after that one baseball game or softball game or whatever the case may be, where they take that over maybe like the best gift you got them for their birthday or Christmas or whatever holiday, right? And it's almost like that idea of where you buy that expensive gift, but they just want to play with the box instead.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is just a great metaphor in life, where it's like you can think you can get the best present and they might like it, sure. but they might go and take that box and make a spaceship out of it, and feel like they're blasting off into space. So it's just it's all about the little things. And again, another cliche, but it's like that's true, especially with kids. Like they don't care, you know, where they are, as long as they're with you, they're safe and they're having fun.
You're talking about the vacation type, as long as everybody's together. So when my wife and I, we did a combination of honeymoon slash family trip. So we took all three kids to San Diego. So after the trip, my wife said, "What was the best part for you?" And I'm just thinking, oh, here's the right answer. And I said, well, the fact that all three kids get along. And she goes, my favorite part is when they were arguing, because it really seemed and cemented the fact that even though her two daughters and my son are not blood, they were acting like true brother and sisters. And I took a step back. I go, you're right, because that means that whatever we did to get to that point where all three kids get along, but are also at the point where they're comfortable with each other and having those disagreements and having those, little bit of rivalry, just made me go, I get it. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful feeling that, as a blended family, we were hopefully on the road of doing good for our kids.
Yeah, yeah. I I definitely agree with that, man.
So I want to talk about your book, the Life of Dad book.
Sure.
What stories from that book impacted you from a lot of those celebrities?
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. Me and one of my co-hosts for one of the Facebook Live shows we did, John Finkel. We kind of did this thing called a lunch break. We'll still do it here and there. Um, but he's like, Art, you got a lot of great stuff here, and he's written countless of books. He's got a new book actually called 1996, a biography, and it just kind of talks about like what was going on in pop culture and sports and all that other stuff. And it's he's a great writer. So he's definitely, I'm giving him a little shout out and plug right there. But we talked about he's like, you should do a book, and I'm like, okay, cool. And some of my friends too were like, hey, you've interviewed so many cool people and all this other stuff. Why don't you do a book? I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then I actually had someone who's been there, who's written books before, and he's definitely helped me along the way. So that was fun. And I think, yes, having these podcasts, you think about the messages and all that, but then when you have to put these messages into an order, or put them into different categories, you start realizing the ones that affected you a lot, right? And so for me, I'm a big Star Wars geek, and having Mark Hamill talk to me about fatherhood was huge. And what he said, because his kids are older and they're out of the house per se, they're living their own lives, they're adults. But he said, looking back on it, the biggest thing that he's a fan of is the fact that he's still he still has great relationships with his kids. And he's like, that to me shows that they still want to be around me, that they still care, and that I did a good job. And I was like, great, right? I mean, for me, that was almost like sound advice. That was Jedi sound advice.
Exactly.
Not that Yoda was giving me, but Luke Skywalker was giving me,
Yep.
right? In the sense of like, you want to make sure that your kids care about you, so when they leave the nest, they'll be like, hey, here we go. We still want to, reach out to Art or Dad and see what he's doing, and all that other stuff. So that was big, just on so many different levels. And then if you ever interview stand-up comics, to me, like stand-up, comics, I think have a really tough job, in the sense of like, people are going there with the idea that you're gonna make them like, you have to make them laugh, right? They're buying tickets, they're buying 2 drink minimums, whatever the case may be. It's like, you're going there, and like, you better make me laugh. You better make me, enjoy my time out here, right? Um, so like, I always respect stand-up comics, and of course, one of a well-known comedian that we had on was that I had on was Bill Engvall, and
Oh yeah.
he said his kids, at the time, I think one just got married and one was still in college. Um, he was just saying like, make sure that it's a two-way conversation. Listen to what they have to talk about. It might not seem like it's like in the big scheme of things, like, they might, what they're talking about might not matter in the grand scheme of things, but don't tell them it doesn't mean things, because to them at that age, whatever age they are, it means the world to them. So making sure that you not only talk to them, but you listen is huge, because you can actually get a great view into their life about how they perceive things and what's going on in life by just listening and actually caring what they say. So those were like two of the, like, I mean, there were so many great dads sharing their, thoughts about, life lessons, things teaching their kids and all these other great things. But Mark Hamill and Bill Engvall's like always stick with me. I remember when we were kind of doing a book tour and people were interviewing us for the book, those are the two that I just kept on using, because those are the ones that spoke to me. All of them spoke to me, but where I was at as a dad and what advice I needed at that time, or what advice spoke to me about, again, like you said, how we talked about earlier, like, are we doing enough, or how can we be better? Those were the two that, like, all right, you can be in the moment, but you can also think about things in the future, which is great too. And when my kids get older, are they still going to want to hang out with me once they get out of the nest, so to speak? And then also too, how do you do that? Well, you do that by listening and taking an interest in what they care about, and having a two-way conversation and not just a one-way conversation.
Yeah, and a huge fan of Blue Collar Tour, Bill Engvall.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember for a while when they had, didn't they had a reality show for a little bit.
Hmm.
And, you know, the funny thing about Bill Engvall was, I remember some of those episodes where, he understands that he's a goofball, and he has that issue where, uh, am I doing the right thing? Am I being a good dad? But it's funny because you look at celebrities and you think that they all have it figured out because they're a celebrity. And one of my favorite Instagrams is Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, and her husband Jesse Itzler. I
Yep.
mean, Sarah Blakely is the one of the goofiest people you would ever meet, and she is, as a businesswoman, brilliant. And Jesse Itzler is a health nut, and the two of them and raising their kids. I mean, it's just, I mean, yeah, we're essentially just a third party with a lot of their video content, but they it's just funny to watch. I mean, Sarah Blakely on Sunday mornings is on Instagram making pancakes for her kids. I mean, Jesse Itzler, they're at a swim meet at one of their kids' events, and they're just, I hate to say it this way, but they're just normal people, but
Yeah.
they have the same struggles as you and I do, Art of, are we doing enough? Are we able to support our kids? Are we, being present? So it's just interesting, the celebrities you spoke to. I think, was it Shaq that talked about gratitude, I think?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you see, especially where he was coming up from and what he saw when he was a kid, and the hard work that he saw, and he's like, all right, I got to do the same. And they always throw out the, like, oh, the busiest man in show business, right? Like, he is one of them. If you see all the stuff that he's doing, not just for the NBA, but he's doing stuff for his different businesses. I know, like, I think he's now has a part in Papa John's. He's
Right.
got all of these different things that he's doing, and you're like, this guy is nonstop, and you see that his work ethic was huge. Like he's won NBA titles and all that, and you mentioned Jesse Itzler. Like I spoke with him too, and like he's just like that guy's work ethic is insane too.
Oh
So
yeah.
It's great. And going back to the Blue Comedy Tour, the Blue Collar Comedy Tour, like out of the four guys, there's Bill Engvall, Larry the Cable Guy, Ron White, and Jeff Foxworthy. I had Jeff Foxworthy on for the Art of Fatherhood podcast, and he broke the cycle of abandonment, and he talked about it too. Like we had a good, I don't know, 45-minute conversation about everything from comedy writing to different stuff that he's created through his different entertainment fields. But then also too, like the biggest thing, of course, was our fatherhood chat, and his father left him when he was a kid, and his grandfather left his dad when he was a kid. When his father was a kid. So Jeff was like, I broke the cycle of abandonment, and I had recently J.R. Martinez on, and his dad, left him too, and we were talking about like, hey, you broke the, that cycle as well. But then he's like, yeah, it was great that I broke that. But then he was like, I was harboring some things that my mom did that weren't that great to me that I was doing to my daughter. And he's like, I had to break that too. So we might get past one stone, right? But then there's more stones in our way that lead us, that are on the path to being a good parent, right? So again, like, it's very cyclical, I guess, with what we're going back to what you said earlier about like, am I doing enough, right? And the different guys you chat with, they open up about these things, and you're like, oh, well, how can I improve in my life too? So I think especially for you, Tommy, like having this podcast, I believe, just like mine, where like you are picking the brains of these guys, but you're also learning from them, and it makes you a better parent, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things, and that's a great point too, Art, is somebody asked me if I've ever had, a sit-down conversation with my son and just simply asked, how am I doing as a dad? And when I heard that, it was like, I don't know if I want to have that conversation. I don't want the truth to come out, but at the same time, you want to learn. You want to learn what you can improve on. And so one day, luckily it was before my son was driving, so he was a captive audience, and we were driving from our house to his, I think it was either a hockey game or a hockey practice. And I said, listen, I just want to know, how am I doing as a dad? Where can I help you? How can I improve? And, he's one of those, well, I shouldn't say kids, he's 18, but, he's one of those people that just, he'll listen and just say very little, but I understand him. So he said, Dad, you're doing good. You're doing good. Don't worry. I'm like, well, I have to worry. He goes, don't worry about it. And it's funny because, my dad and my son will talk to each other, and then my dad will call me and go, man, a few words. I said, yeah, but you have to understand, it's something you were talking about too, Art, is, learning from our kids as far as what are their interests. And, if you're, you own a business and you have employees, you have to understand how the employees communicate. And I said to my dad, I go, he is more comfortable with texting. You will get more out of him out of texting than you will out of a verbal conversation. So you have to understand, in that situation, to my dad, was have to understand his communication. And his communication, he's more comfortable just texting. And I'm looking forward to this campus visit because, yeah, I want conversations to become organic, but at the same time, I want to ask him again. Again, he's going to be a captive audience with me for a week, and ask him, how am I doing? What, especially now that he's going away
So we live in Colorado, Art. He's going to Michigan for school, and it's not going to be it's not an easy plane ride, and it's not, if he's struggling, Dad, I need you. It's not going to be an hour-long drive. It's going to be, let's talk it out. Let's let's FaceTime. Let's do something until I can get there. So that's where, again, I'm struggling now, Art. And this is why I'm so grateful to speak to you and have the opportunity to speak to other dads in my circle. Is it goes back to, did I do enough to prepare him for 4 years of college, many states away? And that's why I was, love, some of the people that you interviewed for the book, The Life of Dad. And when I read about Shaquille, gratitude, I mean, I think that there are times as parents, we don't bring that enough to our kids to be grateful and learn more about gratitude. And, I mean, I'm grateful for, our blended family, that, the kids do get along, that they do act like brother and sisters. But at the same time, I, I, are they grateful for what my wife and I've done for them? So, I mean, that's why I was so loving the information about your book, hearing from other dads that, again, celebrity type dads that have their struggles too.
Yeah, and a couple things that you were sharing right there, about gratitude. I'll get to in a second, but just you're prepping your son for when he goes off to college. Like it's tough because I think we were kind of, a few years back, there was like that helicopter parenting thing going on, right? Where you're like, you don't want them to fall, you don't want them to fail, and all these other things. And there was a light bulb that kind of turned on to me when my daughter, my oldest, when she was in sixth grade, one of her teachers said, like, you know what fail stands for? And they're all like, what? The response from the teacher was first attempt in learning. And I was like, and that stuck with my daughter. I mean, she gets great grades. Like her last quarter for seventh grade was like a 98. So like we tell our kids to keep on working hard and all that other stuff. But if you fail, don't worry about it. Just learn from your mistakes. And I think, with any kid, that when they go off, like, did I prepare them enough? Did I do this? Like, did I tell them what to do? And you're not going to have like sit down with them before he leaves and be like, you're going to go from A to Z being like, this is what you need to do. Right. Thankfully with technology, yeah, you might not be able to be an hour away, but you can do FaceTime. You can do all of these things where there's going to be a presence than just a phone call, right? He can see you if you guys, FaceTime, whatever the case may be, or Zoom or whatever. And, if in case he really needs you, you can, fly over there to see him. But I think it's tough because it's easier for me saying this about your son. If someone's asked me about this about, my daughters, I think it would be easier said than done. But you want to feel like, all right, in our house, we try to give our kids like everything that they need to do to be better people, right? And be a positive influence in this world. They can always reach out to us, but like they're going to have some doubt or have some self-doubt or go through some things. Like you don't want their hearts to get broken. You don't want them to fail on a test, but like they're going to learn through that, right? Like we all learn through that. So I think we can't always be there for them, especially as they get older. They're going to need to figure things out. So that was one of the things. And then two, with gratitude, I think it's like for me, I remember like I just, I tell people this in whether it's a podcast or just, and maybe different articles I've written where I was probably 6 months out of college. I was living on my own. I was in my apartment and I was checking, I was working for, I think, Fidelity Investments at the time, like, helping people out with their benefits and all that other good stuff. And it was like the first job I got out of college. And I just looked at, taxes, medical insurance, all these things, right? And like, I just got back from an oil change, and it was like maybe a Saturday or a Friday if I took the day off, whatever the case may be. And I'm like, So I called my parents and I just said like, hey, how you guys doing? Like, good. I'm like, just want to say thanks. And they're like, for what? I'm like, for everything. And like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, and I just explained, I'm like, I just looked at my paycheck and I looked at like the medical benefits and all this other stuff. And I just had to get an oil change, and just got done grocery shopping. And if I didn't thank you guys in the moment, I just want to say thank you for everything. And like, I have a really good relationship. My mom's passed away, but my dad's still here. And like, I have a good relationship with him. But like, I would love to see like the looks on their faces, because it was over the phone, right? And then being like, wow, what kind of sparked it? And I kind of gave them some explanation, but I think gratitude will come in different forms. Our youngest, she graduated 5th grade, and she wanted this one like Lego treehouse that like could turn like, you could change the leaves from like green to, orange for like it to represent like the fall time and all that other stuff. And she wanted for a little bit, and she kicked butt. I mean, our kids were doing virtual school, and I know it was a tough time. And, for her her graduation present for 5th grade, leaving elementary and going to middle school, we got her this. And like 3 or 4 times already. I mean, her last week of school was 2 weeks ago, or that like a Friday, like 2 Fridays ago. And she was like, Dad, thanks for that, the treehouse. I really love it. And she built it like right away, and she's like displays it in her room, and she's so excited about that. So, I mean, there are different forms of gratitude that you're going to find, and they might not say thank you, but then also too, they'll be like, they could be, after college and they get into the quote unquote real world, they'll be like, wow, look what Dad did for me, right? So you might have those moments, man.
I'm hoping. I mean, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I just read a great article in the Huffington Post, and I really want to get your take on this, Art, because your podcast deals with, parenting, men stuff. And I really love this article. And again, it's in the Huffington Post. And the title is "My Best Friend and I Are Straight Married Men, and We Will Tell Each Other I Love You." And I have a very small circle of guy friends that after a conversation, we will say, I love you. And I want your take, Art, as not only a man, but as a dad, that, and I'm going to rely on you being an expert in this field. And that is, do you feel that as men, we are stuck in that aspect of the I love you aspect to another man in the Stone Age?
I think, maybe going back to, just with the home improvement time, like the 90s and all that stuff, it started coming about. Like they'd have a couple episodes where they might, not just home improvement, but just other shows, right? Too. They might like say, like, hey man, I love you, or something, or just something along those lines. Or there was I think it was a commercial like, hey man, I love you, man, or something, right? And people would joke about that and being like, oh yeah, that too.
Yeah.
But I remember there was like some commercial that was like, I love you, man, or something. It was just like, and it was kind of like tongue in cheek, but if people, even though we're talking about people who've influenced us, from different things we've read or listened to, whatever the case may be, but there are some harmful things out there, right? And of course, like the whole idea, like a few years back, the phrase toxic masculinity came out, and everyone was like, you can't be a man anymore and all this other stuff. And if you just actually looked at what people were trying to convey and what people were trying to think about mental health, or how do you show love if you're a man, and all these other things, right? And I honestly don't, to me, I'm in a house with, my wife and two daughters and all that, and we even joke that our cats are female, right?
Female,
So
yeah. I've
it's
gone through
just
that
like, yeah,
story too.
yeah. So I'm just like the only male figure in the house, right? And so I we definitely have open conversations with our kids about relationships and love, and I try and be a good role model for my kids to see what a partner should do and how they should respect their spouse and treat them and all that other good stuff. And you want to be equal in that relationship too. Like it's like there's going to be times where you might be doing more or might be doing less. It just depends on the situation. And I think ultimate love is just like not having a general journal and debiting and crediting things. It's like, well, I did this Monday, so tomorrow you better do this if you love me, right? Um, so I think just for guys in general, like if you if you're passionate about something and if you care about someone and you don't say the word I love you, right? Like that doesn't mean you don't care for that person, you don't love them. Maybe it's just like some people say it all the time, some people don't. And I think having that conversation with your kids, being like, "Oh, so and so's dad says I love you" to their kids all the time. Why don't you? It's like, I do love you, and maybe I don't show it that way. I don't say it, but I show it this way. It's like like that book, like the five love languages, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
there's the first edition, and then there's the kids edition, and I highly recommend people reading all of those. My wife and I have talked about the other one, like both books, and we can definitely describe which one, her love language, my love language, our kids' love languages, and all that. And what you might expect, Tommy, as opposed to what I'd expect in a relationship, it I think we'll start to understand that once we know more about each other or this or that. Like if you just like you have to invest in a relationship in that whatever way you feel like you should invest in that relationship and the way it's beneficial for the other person on the other end of that relationship. Those are the things that I think that people will see as love. And maybe if you don't say the word love and all that other stuff, but like you show it through your actions. There's different forms of love and different ways you can show your love. And I mean, heck, I think just saying that it just reminds me lessons we've learned on Sesame Street. Like when we were kids and when our kids were in the stages of watching Sesame Street, you kind of remember those lessons that a puppet was telling you. It's like, all right, like that's right, I should do that or I should do this. So I think love comes in different forms, and each and I think the biggest thing is too is like talking to your kids about relationships. Like I have some really great friendships from elementary school that I still have, and then I've built some new relationships to when we moved to North Carolina. So like it, and every relationship is different, and and the way you act with one friend is going to be different because one friend appreciates this and one friend might not appreciate that, so you might do what they want. So sorry for like maybe not giving a specific answer, but I think it's just kind of like is determined on the relationship you have with that person, and your kids will pick up on it. But I think having the conversations about love and care and what types of relationships you have with certain people would be great, just in the sense of like sharing your thoughts about love so they understand like, oh, this is how he thinks about it, and they can build their own foundation of love based on what they see and what they hear.
No, I mean, I was again curious about, hearing from another father, another man, what their thoughts on it, just because, again, everybody's raised differently. Everybody's household is differently. And, for me with my dad, I always remember, the times, I go visit him as a youngster. I'm again grateful that he is one of those people that says I love you. He was, every time I would leave and have when my mom would pick me up, or if he was taking me to the train. Which I here's the funny thing, Art, as I think about this, here I am, probably 8 years old, alone on a train going from the burbs of Chicago to downtown Chicago. And, back then thought nothing of it. I mean, just sat on the train, looked out the window. But the point was, my dad, he always said, I love you. And, he would always give me a kiss. And in a couple weeks, I will see my dad and I will hug him. I will kiss him. I will tell him I love you. And I hope, unfortunately, and this is going to sound bad, Art, but my former wife, she's not like that. She was not raised as a huggy person. And so when I go and say goodbye to my son, so like I was saying, like this past Saturday, I went down and watched him play hockey. And after the game, gave him a hug. He that's not his comfort zone. And I'm going to keep hugging him until I can't hug him anymore.
Yeah. No, and that, oh yeah, and that is great. And again, like, I think every dad's journey is going to be different, right? And you can take bits and pieces from what people listening to this take, bits and pieces from what you, Tommy, and then from me, and then like different things that they've heard from other dads. And it's always like you said, it goes back to like, am I doing enough? And that's, I think, the good step in parenting. And you're always just questioning things. Have some faith in what you're doing is right. And the idea that your kids are still alive, that's a great thing, right?
Yeah.
So like, people joke about that, but like, that's just, worry, but don't worry too much where all of a sudden you keep on second guessing yourself. Like, go with your instincts, right? And I think that will lead into, because if you're caring about things, you're going to I think make the best choices in life to becoming that parent, that great parent you want to be. You're not going to be a perfect parent, but because I don't even think there's a perfect parent, right?
No.
We live in that that Instagram or social media world where everything is picture perfect. But if you actually look before and after to what led up to that photo, you'll find that like everything wasn't just peaches, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and again, going back to my example of my son, yeah, I'm gonna probably the first few months I'm gonna be on pins and needles when he's away. But it's exactly like you were saying earlier. We have to let our kids fail. They have to learn, right or wrong. They're going to need to learn because I will say I am far from a helicopter parent. I mean, when I first taught my son how to skate, I said to him, just, we're going to go, you're going to do one lap and we'll leave. And that's it. And he said, okay. But the rule was you couldn't hang on to the boards as you skated. You had to, shuffle, but you had not to use the boards. And I'll tell you, Art, one lap, and he ended up loving it. And we ended up staying, the whole time for public skating. And that, because of that, then the following season, he wanted to play hockey. And so not having him use the boards was my way of saying, you're going to learn how to fail by falling down and then getting back up, and falling down, getting back up. But even 18 years later, Art, like I said, I'm going to be a wreck this fall when he goes there, because, I'm not going to be there, to hold him. And I'm looking forward, and this might be some, advice for you, Art, and other dads out there, is let them fail. The 18 years flew by so fast, especially these last 4 years in high school, where I remember the first night of parent orientation at his high school, and now just a few weeks later, we had graduation. And And I have to ask myself occasionally, Art, where did those 4 years go?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think that it's going to be nerve wracking for you. And I can't even, I'm going to be there in a few years.
Right.
And like you said, you just hope you arm them with knowledge, care, and compassion, and love, and everything that you think that they need to go out into this world. And high school is one thing where you're kind of finding yourself. College is definitely another. And then after that, they start to set on a path that is completely their own, and there might be some influence that you and your the parents have and all that other stuff, but it's you never stop being a parent. Even when they get out of college and they get on their
Mm-hmm.
own, you're always gonna worry and care about them. So it's just like, you're prepping up for college. I'm prepping up for both of them being in middle school. And then, for me, it's gonna be like learning them, teaching them how to drive and all that other stuff. So there's always that next thing where you're feeling like, oh, here's the next thing. I thought I was fine. I thought I passed this. It's not a a race, it's a marathon, right? It's not a sprint,
Right.
it's a marathon, and that's so true.
All right, Art. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. I want to honor your time. Before I give you the last question,
Mhm.
um, there was something I saw on your website, Art of Fatherhood, artoffatherhood.net, that the Reebok pump is coming
Yeah,
back.
yeah,
And I was laughing because um, Reebok did that to their skates, their hockey skates as well. And I always remember my son getting a pair of the Reebok pump skates, and I'm going, why?
yeah.
Why? So I was like, again, I was laughing seeing that article about Reebok bringing the pump back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sneakerhead. I grew up like, in the 80s and 90s, and of course, like, a big fan of Jordan, and
Yeah.
I just loved sneakers back then and still do today. Like, but like the Bo Jackson SC Trainer, the Air Jordan, the Reebok Pump, the Allen Iverson Question from Reebok, and there was some other like great Adidas shoes as well. It's just like I think especially too with toys and all that other stuff like Transformers and He-Man, they're retroing those boxes and making it look like back in the day when we were kids. And to me, I'm just like, man, you're suckering me in because yeah, sure, I need an Optimus Prime, right? Because I
Yeah.
already have two other ones that are unboxed, but this one's in the old school box. So yeah, why
Yes.
not? I need that. So they're doing good with the whole. I mean, I guess it's again, they've probably like our parents probably saw stuff that they were like retroing or bringing back, and it's like, oh, I remember that, right? And my office is filled, as my wife would say, with tchotchkes, whether it's sneakers or it's collectibles from like Star Wars or Marvel or DC. But yeah, it's just it's funny how those certain packagings or certain things that you grew up in your childhood come back, and you're like, I need those.
I think the Transformer cartoon is coming back.
They have like a few iterations, and they're coming back with the Masters of the Universe on Netflix next month.
Nice. I
Yeah,
love the Transformer cartoons. I mean the movies were phenomenal too, but
yeah,
talk about nostalgia. The cartoons were great.
no doubt.
All right, Mr. Art Eddy. The Once again, the website is artoffatherhood.net. Your book, The Life of Dad book, great stories, great stories.
Thank you.
Um, and I'm honored that you're the co-founder of Life of Dad. Huge fan. Um, great content, great content out there. All right. So, Art, because you're a fellow podcaster, if you could step into my shoes, what would you have asked that I did not ask? If you could step into my shoes, what would you have asked that I did not ask?
Oh man. See, again, I think that goes back to I think you did a great job, man. I really appreciate you inviting me on the show. And this is not a cop out answer. I think this kind of goes with what we were talking about, right? Like you prepped up these questions the way you felt like you needed to, right? And especially being someone who does interviews, it's like you had this mindset of where you wanted to go. We talked about some other things as well that popped in our minds, and you were great to go around that way. So this might sound like a cop out, but just for someone who does, interviews and all that other stuff, I thought I don't think you needed to. I don't think there should be a question in there, man. And I hope you don't mind me answering it that way. But like, I think you're leading this bus, so to speak, on our destination for this podcast. And I think you did a great job. And like, to say that question, I see where maybe you're coming from. But like for me, like I just feel like you did great prep work. This if people know your show, they know what to expect. So. Hope you don't mind. Like, it's not a cop out answer, even though I keep on saying that. Like, but I just think like you prepped up for this, and this is the way you want to run it, and so you can't like tell a chef how to cook his own barbecue, right? If you're invited over. So I'm not one of those people that says like, oh, you didn't put this in there. Like, why didn't you do that, right? So for me, I thought you did a great job, and I was honored to be on your show, sir.
Oh, Art, thank you so much. I'm always nervous asking that question because I don't know where the guest is going to go with it. So, but thank you for still answering it. I am grateful. I am so, again, grateful for what you're doing. Again, seeing the things you post on LinkedIn with your podcast. I am so honored that I get to talk to another guy who is just trying to help promote we dads out there. So Art, thank you so much for your time. And next time I got to have you on because I want to talk Bleacher Report because I'm a hockey nut. I'm a diehard Cub fan. And I'm sure we could learn great stories from your sports knowledge next time, Art.
Nice. Yeah. If you're a big sports fan, man, I know it sounds like you are. The interview I had with Sean Grandy from
Yes.
The Voice. It just came out today, and if you listen to it, his son is at the time like he shares stories about like when his son was like 7 years old, and his son and him were hanging out in the Red Sox dugout, and you got to see who he was introducing his son to. But the stories he tells me in this is just great. So I definitely check that out because if your fans are big fans of sports, they'll appreciate Sean because he's a down to earth guy. He's been calling Celtics games for some time now, but like the stories he shares about being a dad and how he's intertwining fatherhood with his career in sports is fantastic. So definitely check that out, man. I think you'll get a kick out of it.
Yeah, head on over to Art's website, artoffatherhood.net, artoffatherhood.net. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to. Yeah, I did see it on your website, so I'm looking forward to definitely listening to that, Art.
Thank you, sir.